join for this week's Let's Talk Legal, made possible by Neumann van Rooyen Attorneys. And with me in studio once again, I do have Andre Styger. Andre, thank you so much again for joining me here in studio.
Thank you, Jessica. Always nice being with you.
Absolutely. Now today, I must be honest, we are going to be chatting about something that I think is on everybody's minds at this stage, and that has to do with solar panels and, of course, the law regarding that. Now, with load shedding and the ever-increasing cost of electricity, more and more homeowners are installing solar panels and inverters. Now, what are some of the legal implications they should consider?
There's quite a number, but I think let's start with the most pertinent ones. The first of all, I suppose everybody or most people will know that for this financial year, starting on the 1st of March until end of February next year, and only for this financial year, there's a tax incentive that government announced where you can basically deduct your solar panels from your tax liability. But there are certain requirements, and maybe we should just quickly touch on those. It's not unlimited. For instance, that you can only claim back 25% of what you spend on new and unused solar panels, up to a maximum of 15,000. Now, it's easier said than done because there's certain things we need to take note of. It must be a new or an unused solar panel. So the idea behind it is that they want us to import solar panels. They want to add electricity to the grid. So you can't buy a second-hand panel from a friend or a neighbor and think you're going to apply for this. So it must be new or never been used before. And then obviously you can only claim back 25% of what you spend on that, but that will only be on the panel itself. It will not be the inverter or the battery or the cost and the labor for installing that. So it's limited to that. So it's actually just the panel itself. And then the panel itself must be of a certain standard just to make sure we don't import inferior stuff. So the panel itself must be at least capable of generating 275 watt per panel. So the point I'm trying to get to, if you want to use this tax incentive, make sure you know what you can claim for, what you should buy and how you should do it to qualify for that, because it is quite handy. Instead of this just being a rebate or something, or just an incentive, it's actually a proper rebate. So what it will mean come end of next year's financial, when we do our tax assessments and I get an assessment from SARS to pay them, let's say 20,000, I'm actually allowed to deduct 15,000 of that tax liability straightforward. You know, people tend to get these things confused where they think that whatever you spend on solar will not be taxed. That's not the case. Yeah, you can actually deduct your tax, your expense from your actual tax assessment, which is great. But I would advise that people do get professional financial advice on the legality, on the requirements and further legalities that might apply. Then also some of the things that we need to take into account of is that you have to have a proper certificate of compliance issued by a qualified electrician that will state that this was installed properly within the time period prescribed. That is not only costly, but it also limits where you can maybe use your buddy, that's electrician, to come and do it one Saturday. You know, that unfortunately will not apply unless somebody is willing to certify it and check it afterwards and put his hand to paper. So that's one thing that we should keep in mind. And the system must be connected to the main distribution board, meaning that if I can give an example, let's say I'm staying on a farm and I've got a storeroom some way away from my main residence. I say, no, but I'm using the storeroom now also as a residence, because keep in mind this only applies to residential. I'm not talking about the business incentives. I'm only talking about private and individual incentives. Your business incentives is another topic for another day. But you can't just maybe use your outhouse and put on a solar panel and say, okay, now I'm going to claim it back. If that outhouse or storeroom or whatever, even your caravan for that matter, if it's not linked to the main distribution board, meaning you won't qualify for it. And once again, you have to think what they're trying to do. They want to lighten the load of electricity being generated by Eskom. And if you weren't linked to Eskom, then if you install solar, it's not going to lighten the load because you weren't linked in to start off with. So just keep that in mind. There's no fancy tricks that they will be brought into use before the end of February next year. You must buy it, or you should have paid for it after the 1st of March this year, and it must be used before the end of February next year. So unfortunately, some people who paid major money in January and so forth before this was made official, they're going to be losing out on that one. and just be aware of that. So that is the main thing, I think, as far as legalities regarding the tax break is concerned. And again, I just want to specify, get financial advice from people before you do make this expense, because we just brushed over it. There's a lot more to be said on it. But the one, however, that does concern me the most is the impact of solar on your house. And people should take note of this, because this is major. A lot of insurance companies are handling solar panels in a different way. For instance, let's say you have 8 panels on your roof, and one of those panels get damaged or stolen, then you want to claim for it. But now solar is now so innovative, the whole industry, that whatever technology is coming out today will be most likely be obsolete in 6 months because of this enormous turnover. And what it means is, and one of the limitations of solar is, to a great extent, not guaranteed, but to a great extent, the panels are linked and if you remove one, you have to replace one with something similar. Now, you might put up 8 panels and one gets stolen or damaged in 2 years down the line, and now you want to claim because now the entire system is rendered useless because the one has been taken out. It's like taking one battery out of a torchlight. Now you can't find that, and this is where it becomes tricky, because what happens now if you have an insurance claim? Will they only pay you for one solar panel, or will they replace the entire system, although the other 7 has not been damaged or stolen for that matter? And just keep in mind, since solar has become such an hot topic, the theft has jumped through the roof. It's amazing, because the prop on your roof to start off with, and you don't need to gain access to a house. And they do it during the day, and they don't take all of your panels. They just pop up to the roof, take one panel that's worth 4,000 rands, give or take, and that's it. So, and it does happen. Now, by doing that, they break the entire solar cell. So now the remaining 7 is rendered useless unless you can replace that one something similar. And this is where the insurance conundrum comes in, because what happens if you can't find the one? Now, will it just replace the money or the value for the one, or will they be replacing the entire cell or entire system? And that you've got to specify, because believe it or not, different insurance companies handle it differently. So if you have installed solar, or you're going to install solar, make sure that you in writing notify your insurance company. I'll come back to which one you should be notifying, and make sure they respond and say, listen, if this happens, this is what we will do. Because some of them have the approach of saying, listen, but if we replace all of it and only one was damaged, we're putting you in a better position than what you was. The counter argument being, if my old TV gets stolen, I can't find the similar model, you're going to replace it with a new one in any case. So there's arguments back and forth, but this is something that has not settled yet, and avoid some pain by making sure that you take it up with your insurance company beforehand. Now, this is also something important, which insurance company, because we have life insurance, that pays out when I die and settles the house. This is obviously not applicable. But also short-term insurance. What happens if somebody breaks in and steals my TV? Will it have the same type of insurance apply when they steal a solar panel? And the general zest is no, because the panels are affixed to the house itself permanently. It should be building insurance, house insurance. That's usually the insurance that you have if your house is still mortgaged, that will be covered by the bank via the insurance company or via your broker that was ceded to the bank. So make sure you notify the correct insurance type of insurance company, and hence my advice to get that done in writing. Because if you don't do so and the house burns down, even if it wasn't the solar panel's fault, you will not be insured, or you run the risk of not being insured. Even if it was an electrical fault and the assessor comes in and says, listen, but there's solar panels installed here, that you notify the insurance company, and so you might end up not being covered at all, even if the damage was not caused by the solar panel itself. So this is, I can't overemphasize this enough. If there's a solar installed in your house, you're going to install it, make sure you update your insurance and make sure you know what you're going to get should it be stolen or damaged, and make sure it's done in writing, and keep track of that. And then maybe just a final remark on this as far as legalities is concerned is the certificate of compliance that's going to be issued by the electrician. Not all electricians can issue certificate of compliance. So although you might claim and say, listen, but I didn't know the one I have is invalid, make sure you get some kind of guarantee or undertaking from your electrician that you're using to certify, to say, listen, but I am compliant and I can certify this. They usually add an addendum to your existing certificate of compliance, but I don't want to get into the details of that. There's just a couple of things that people should take into account now that solar is becoming so prominent. And then obviously obviously, when you buy and sell a house, make sure that the solar is addressed in the sale itself. I don't think there will be much of a dispute whether it will be removed or not, although it's possible, but make sure that the legalities, the certification and so forth is in place, because you're taking it over, and you might run the risk of taking over certain risks and liabilities without knowing so. So that's more or less just in a brief recap. I suppose one can say a lot more, but that should be enough to scare everybody just to think twice about solar legalities.
Definitely, but that is, of course, some information that I think many of us did not take into consideration. But Andre, thank you so much for joining us once again in studio, and as always, enlightening us on a very hot topic at this moment.
Thank you, Jessica. Nice being with you.
So there we have it. That was this week's Let's Talk Legal, made possible by Neumann van Rooyen.